The Times have written a piece about poor old rich people. Apparently, six figures still means you are struggling in what they describe as Henrys, which is high earners, not rich yet. I earn more than £120,000 as an accountant. My husband earns less, £95,000. We're a high income household, but only on paper. We're basically your typical Henry couple. It stands for high earners, not rich yet. And it's a term now used by financial institutions to describe people with usually six-figure salaries, but crucially, not much accumulated. The banks aren't looking to court us. Our accounts are far from flush. My husband goes into his savings each month to survive. Well, I don't have any money left over in my account at the end of the month. Our take home should be a lot of money, and yet earning 120 grand is one of the worst places to be because you get totally shafted. You lose half of your tax-free allowance for every £2 you earn over 100 grand. You lose £1 of your tax-free personal allowance, and you lose out on free childcare help from the government too. As I've learnt, once your taxable income reaches 100 grand, you don't get your 30 hours of free childcare, but a blanket 15 hours instead. You also lose the ability to claim tax-free childcare up to £2,000 a year. I kid you not, this next bit is real. This is a real paragraph. It isn't fair. That extra money will be a game changer. We get 20% off what we pay our nanny. It would mean that we would have a little bit of money left in the bank at the end of the month. Our nanny! You really could not make it up. Now, first of all, £120,000 per year puts you in the top 2%. 95k puts you in the top 5%. And this household, this particular household anyway, gets £215,000 per year. Sarah, we have food banks, we have people on welfare who are also in work. Yet a couple in the top 2, maybe 1%, are struggling to pay their nanny, and they are angry that they don't receive all state benefits. What's your response to this article?
Don't. It's actually laughable. It's laughable. When you sent this to me, I was like, this is actually insane. They can go fuck themselves with all due respect. Like, this is a masterclass in ruling class propaganda. Like, oh my God, my life is so hard. I'm struggling out here. I want to be able to save enough money so that I can, with the nanny that I do have, because childcare isn't, is accessible, obviously, to like the common public. That I can have a bit of money left over at the end of the month. I think if you're making 120k or more, you're already in the top 1 to 2% of UK earners. And that's not rich yet. That seems so obscenely comfortable compared to the vast majority of us who are probably on that median income. I think the median income in the UK is about 37k. And even that isn't enough for people to live a life that is full of prosperity. You literally have 3 million people waiting for emergency food parcels, or that's the number of food parcels getting handed out, got handed out last year, and people who are struggling as a result of that. That's Britain's real story of economic struggle, not these people who are earning this amount of money and are like, yeah, well, I'm really, life's really tough. And this is coming from someone who was a nanny in London for incredibly rich families, and I navigated that space, and they were going to art galleries for a day, like, which is great, amazing, like, go spend some time with your hubby, but at the same time you can afford to pay me a large amount of money as well. You're fine. I was a broke student, by the way. I wasn't doing that willingly. I needed money where I could get it. But I think what this article does is that it performs this ideological trick, and it doesn't surprise me that it comes from the Times, to be honest, because it makes affluent professionals seem like the victims of the welfare state instead of seeing themselves as beneficiaries of an economy that's rigged in their favor. And that's what's really pissed me off about this whole story. I think the real injustice isn't that people on six figures lose their tax-free childcare. It's that the very idea of universal childcare isn't even on the table because of neoliberal politicians and their media enablers that have convinced us that public services should only be for the deserving poor.
I want to know about your background as a nanny. I didn't know that. I'm actually really interested. What was it like? I want to know what those that hired you, what they're like. I mean, you have clearly more insight on this than I do.
One of them was a lecturer at my uni.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and she was like, "Hey, I need some assistance," and I said, "Hey, I'm counting my pennies to get Blue Dragon sweet chili for my stir fry that I need to bulk cook." So it looks like we're going to meet in the middle here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a whole other story. But then I ventured into other parts of London where people actually needed childcare, and those rates were incredibly low. But I've made amazing connections. Not with the rich. I don't think they liked me too much. I walked into their house. I was like, why is there a slide in here? Make it makes sense.
Slide. That sounds kind of fun.
It sounds fun.
I mean, to be fair though, like even though I have like the world's smallest violin for these people, I do think there is actually something to this. Not for those who earn that much, by the way, but I'm talking about the bottom 80%. The cost of everything is so expensive, rent, mortgages. So even if you were to think that your wage is decent on paper, I mean, you mentioned that the average wage is 37K. You say that to someone and people go, that's a pretty good wage. But obviously the cost of everything wipes that away. I also believe in universalism. So I actually support free childcare regardless of how much you earn. I wouldn't taper it off based on earnings. So obviously they were saying if you hit 100K, it goes from 30 to 15 hours of free childcare. And I mean, people might disagree with me, but as a socialist, I'm like, I still think these people should get 30 hours. And then you can just tax it back by slightly increasing income taxes on higher earners. So you're kind of paying for it. And also, because it's through general taxation, it will save them money. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I completely agree with you. I'm of the same essence because I think that there are fundamental human rights that people deserve to access, housing being one of them, childcare being one of them. People are not having children because they cannot afford it, not because they don't want kids, it's because they can't have them. The way that this country's built up means that even though 37K sounds like a lot, maybe a few years ago it probably would get you quite a few things in a shop. But now 37K doesn't last you at all because, like you said, the cost of living is increasing incredibly. So wages have stagnated quite a lot. But I think I would agree with you. But I think what really grinds my gears a little bit is that I'm still seeing this poor rich narrative that comes out all the time because it hides the wealth extraction that's happening at the top. And I think we saw in 2008, we've seen one of the largest upwards transfers of like wealth in modern history after the pandemic profits, corporate price gouging, landlord gouging, sorry, landlords literally rising rents quite significantly, faster than wages itself. But you won't read the Times weeping for the millions trapped in insecure work or facing eviction. But apparently it's the accountant with a nanny that who wants to save a bit more. But I think if we want real fairness, you're absolutely right. We start, and it goes back to what we always say this on here. And when we analyze Gary Stevenson, we said the same thing as well. Start taxing wealth, not the income. Fund universal services from cradle to grave, like childcare, healthcare, housing, all of it, and stop gaslighting working people into believing they're jealous of millionaires scraping by on 10K a month. That they aren't struggling, they're just insulated from the world. And I think working people are the only people that are struggling. They're the ones that this system is abandoning daily.
I mean, if you were to get that £215,000 wage, and this is obviously for the couple, um, even in London, because I hear a lot when people say actually 80, 90, 100 grand isn't a lot of money because if you live in London, it's really expensive. But if you have 200 grand in a household income, that's still a lot in London. You can find, even if you found a place, whether if you don't own a home, you can find somewhere to rent for two people for 2 grand. And I'm not saying it's easy. It's incredibly expensive in London. But if you have that wage, I'm sorry, you're not struggling. But it is a question I want to put to you actually. Could this potentially be some sort of pathway to the radicalization of the middle class? Because the middle class are weakening, they are disappearing. And I do think with the rising cost of mortgages, I know this article is kind of a more of extreme level, but because people don't have that much money to be part of the middle class. But if they're feeling the pinch, is it possible that they could be sucked into left populism? And we can speak to these people and say, look, you're clearly a lot more wealthy than I am. You probably are, I would say, tend to be more conservative than we are. However, the real problem is the mega rich. So when we talk about taxing the wealthy, we're not talking about you, but it's the mega rich. And actually, you're now struggling because the cost of living is going up. And you're also saying that you would like to have 30 hours of free childcare. Well, guess what? Who's the political faction is more likely to give you more childcare, who wants to spend more money on public services? It's the left. Is there a possible way of bringing in I would say, the top part of the middle class in?
I actually think that's a really great point. Like there is, you mentioned this thing just before you asked that question about the radicalization of the middle class, and I think that that's absolutely what might happen with the professional middle class. I think the goal is basically with stories like this to kind of turn them away from solidarity with the working class, and instead they will become a resentful constituency who might oppose universal public goods. And I think that that is a huge risk. If they can convince a 120K household that they're being shafted by the state, they can drive them towards anti-tax politics and toward privatization, towards austerity. And I think in short, toward a Thatcherite worldview where public services are delegitimized entirely. And I think that in and of itself is how the Overton window it shifts. They take a privileged group and they convince them that they are under siege. And that privileged group will then be like, yeah, I am under siege and I need to save myself. I need to save those that my family. It will become it's a very, very individualized approach. And then those same people become the social base for the parties on the right, anti-worker policies. Like, and it's a class war. This, as funny as it is, we're laughing at people who wanna save as much money by having 20% off and being able to afford a nanny and whatever. It's actually scary because class wars don't end well. Look at what's unfolding at the moment. I think, yeah, I think it's time the foot soldiers are, and I think the foot soldiers who are the accountant couples with the nannies, they need to realize they're being tricked. They're being tricked entirely with these ideological, this ideological like standpoint.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.